Here. Dwight Justice.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Dwight. Hadimi Demeter.
I'm present.
Thank you. Judy Kazuski.
I'm here, thank you.
Jürgen Volksum.
I'm here, hello.
Thank you, Jürgen. Kirsten Hovey.
Present.
Thank you. Robin Edemy.
I'm here.
Nan Kumar. Thank you, Robin. Nan Kumar, you
I'm present.
online? Thank you. You are here or not? Simeon's not here at the moment. Salima, are you present?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Salima. And Daniel Tayant, are you here? Okay. All right. So we're awaiting Daniel and Daniel and Simeon, who I think are both intending to join us. So presumably they're being dialed in at the moment. I think we are quorating in any case, having 10 members present. So with that, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, and welcome to the final GSSB meeting or call for 2017. This call, of course, caps off an exceptionally busy and productive year for the GSSB and indeed for the Standards Division and the governance team, or the Secretariat, without whom I think the work of the GSSB would be pretty much non-existent, so the indispensable Standards Division and governance team. Of course, a major achievement in 2017 was the finalisation of the new GRI standards, which by all accounts continue to be well received at launch events, in blogs, in the media, etc. We've also been greeted today with... Oh, Daniel?
Yes.
G'day. Just doing an opening introduction. Okay, that's Daniel Tayant. I should mention that we have apologies from Daniel Ingram and from Stian Wandrag, who unfortunately can't be here today. Okay, so we've been greeted with the news today that the GRI board has appointed a new chief executive, and I'm going to admit my ignorance and say I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname, Timothy Mohin or Moin. Can someone correct me with which one it is?
That is fine, Michael. Mohin.
Mohin, thank you. Okay, clearly I don't know Timothy, but I'm sure that I speak for all of us in the GSSB when I extend to him our congratulations and say that the GSB is very much looking forward to meeting and working with him from mid-January when he takes office. Unfortunately, having a new CE does not mean that we get back Eric Hespeneider, our official chair, who quite selfishly departed GSSB and his well-planned and well-deserved retirement mid-year to assume responsibility as interim CE. It's good to hear, however, that Eric's talents and abilities will not be lost to the movement, as he'll continue on the GRI board and, in fact, will become vice chair of GRI next year, and we all know how important vice chairs are. We have apologies from Stian and Daniel Ingram, as I said, both of whom I know are disappointed not to be able to join us today, and both of whom have emailed us their well wishes, particularly to the departing members of the GSSB, and their gratitude for time and experiences shared. Okay, with that introduction, I'll move to the agenda itself, which is up there on the slides for those who are on the meeting webinar. We have a fairly plain agenda. We're going to approve the meeting summary, we hope, approve the project proposal for water, receive and discuss input from the board and the stakeholder council on our two projects, first stage projects, look at the timeline and agenda for next year, discuss membership. Then we have any other business, in which we have an update on standards-related technical queries. We also then have a private session for those listening to the webinar, we have a private session, which is simply administrative matters for a few minutes. So can I ask if anyone has any other business that they are aware of that they would like to add to the agenda now, or if there is any other comment on the agenda? Otherwise, I'll take the agenda as agreed.
No.
No? Okay. Then I'll take the agenda as agreed, and I think we shall move straight into it. The first item, welcome, done, and the approval of the meeting summary. The meeting summary from our last call in November has been distributed. It's on public record also, or the draft meeting summary, I should say. Does anyone have any comments, queries, questions on that they'd like to raise now prior to approving it? I'm assuming that ding was simply someone coming on or going off mute. Okay, I'm not hearing any comments or queries or questions. I shall take that as approval. So shall we record the draft minutes as approved? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the project proposal for review of GRI 303 water. And Chelsea, you're going to lead us through this. The intent is that we actually approve this project proposal today. Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, GSSB members. So we have a similar discussion here as we had on our last call related to GRI 403, Occupational Health and Safety. So we have 3 objectives for the GSSB in this discussion. The first, to discuss and approve the project proposal, and that is subject to any agreed upon changes or modifications. So I know we've received a little bit of feedback from Michael ahead of the call about a few comments on the draft document. That is a draft. We're more than happy to make some changes. Now is the time to voice those. Second, we will discuss key stakeholders or organizations that we should be proactively engaging with during the formation of the project working group process. And last, we will be asking for a GSSB sponsor for this working group. So same as we did for OH&S, we will be asking for somebody to volunteer for that role. So item 02 was the project proposal for water, the draft document. And now I would open it up. I assume it's quite a short document that GSSB members have been able to make it through to the end. And we will ask for any comments or suggested changes, which we could note down. And then subject to no major concerns, we would ask for a vote to approve, subject to those changes discussed and agreed. So maybe I will turn it over to you, Michael, to start, because I know you had a few comments to bring into this document.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. I've got a couple of, and they're not major things, they're really wording, but they're in the template section, so I thought they might be worth raising now. Three items I'd like to mention. One is on line 66, where it talks about, where appropriate, updating, expanding or deleting existing disclosures. Can't just change existing disclosures to content, because it could well be other things besides disclosures that we want to update or expand or delete. On lines 68 and 69, it talks about may also be developed, guidance or recommendations or requirements may also be developed, and this is the part I'm querying, in order to bring the content of GRI 303 in line with internationally recognised water management and reporting practice. Just those words, in order to bring the content in line with the existing practice, does seem unnecessarily limiting, and it does seem that the only changes we're allowing ourselves to make are changes to be consistent with things that are already out there, which would seem, to me anyhow, to possibly stifle our opportunity for any sort of innovation that we might choose to inject into the standard. I just wonder if anyone else has any thoughts on that, or indeed on the previous item that I mentioned. If I'm not hearing anything, I take it people are happy to scrap those words. Yes, go on, Judy, please.
Michael, sorry, I was just going to ask you, can you repeat what the lines were that you were just indicating that comment on?
It was like, sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me well. Maybe I'll get closer. It was lines 68 and 69 of the project proposal.
Okay,
Michael,
thank you. I'll just have a quick. Yeah.
This is Chelsea here. I will just respond. Your comment prompted a good short discussion amongst us in the Standards Division, and we thought this is a good point to be discussing with the GSSB. One of the aims that we have is to, of course, create standards which are globally accessible and universal. So we're seeing this actually, it's a very relevant issue in water where already we know that there's going to be a push amongst experts in the working group for context-based methodologies or some emerging methodologies for measuring and reporting on water impacts, which are leading practice and are still, although gaining traction, still not used by many companies and possess various sets of challenges. So one of the areas when we're looking at these reviews going forward is, at least speaking from a personal perspective here, we're aiming to bring some of that aspirational practice in through the recommendations sections of the standards, but we are also trying to find a balance where the required disclosures will be universally relevant enough that we aren't going to have reporters who can't use the GRI framework because it's simply not accessible to them. So it's good to have the GSSB weigh in on this because it is fundamental in really the objectives of these reviews, and it's good to get that aligned now. So over to you. That was sort of our rationale on the issue.
So Chelsea, where would you land on retaining these words or deleting them? Do I take it from what you said that you might be tempted to delete them if you had your druthers?
I don't know if I would delete them. We can maybe add in a sentence, which I think we have further in the background, about the aim to strike a balance between capturing reporting practice, which is universally or relevant to a global audience of companies and other organizations, but also which can include aspirational or best practice reporting as well. And maybe then we have the flexibility to be mainstreaming with more internationally recognized practice while also using our recommendations section to bring in things which are not going to be globally applicable but are the direction we'd like companies to start moving.
Okay, thank you. Board members have any comments to make on that?
This is Judy.
Judy, yes.
Thanks for that clarification. And I think Chelsea's suggestion about adding some further commentary around the intention behind this is useful to do. It also strikes me as something that is sort of universal across all GRI standards, that we in general seek to use the recommendations section in order to bring in topics and approaches to disclosure that may be emerging or not necessarily universally applicable or considered universally applicable at this time. So I would be supportive of adding some language along the lines of what Chelsea has suggested. I also wouldn't necessarily want to. I would trust the Standards Division to come up with suitable language in that direction as well. Not necessarily need to review it myself before it's finalized. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Others? Can I ask if anyone would be unhappy with the proposal that Chelsea put forward?
No, I'm Nankumar. I'm okay, but can we include before effluents, including the wastewater?
Okay, so that's a separate point. That when we talk about effluents, we talk about wastewater. Correct?
Nandkumar, are you recommending that because you think it's not clear that it would be covered under effluents?
Yeah, all types of wastewater may not, all wastewater may not be effluent.
Okay. That's fine. We can add it in as a
there
clarification point.
There are a lot of treated wastewater which is used as alternate use, which is not defined as effluent.
Okay. Would it not also
Okay,
be
thank you.
covered under the category of water? Or you think there's a clear enough distinction that we need water, wastewater, and effluents?
Yeah, that's what I said, water, wastewater and effluents.
Okay, that's fine. We don't object. Dwight?
Dwight?
Yes, okay. I have two questions, but basically, how would the sentences read now?
Dwight, I don't have the wording off the top of my head. I think that's something that Michael and I could take offline. I think what we would want to capture is that the aim of the project is to bring the disclosures in line with, universally, internationally recognized water management and measurement practice, as well as to bring in aspirational or leading methodologies via recommendations in the standards. Something to that extent, more articulate than that.
That's fine, because the only point I wanted to make is taken care of by that change, which is, as it reads now, it sort of says water management and reporting practice. And in my way of thinking, water management practices is one thing and reporting practices is something else. But that problem is solved by your proposal.
Okay, great.
Any other comments on what's been discussed so far? Again, I assume on these calls, just the nature of calls, not everyone can jump in, and so silence is basically assent. Okay, let's move on to just the final, the third of the points that I wanted to raise, and that is in line 78. It says the project follows the due process protocol. The project will be overseen by the Due Process Oversight Committee, blah, blah. I don't think the project itself is overseen by the DPOC. I think the process is overseen by the DPOC. So I'd simply suggest, it's perfunctory perhaps, but I'd suggest the project follows a due process protocol, implementation of which is overseen by the Due Process Oversight Committee. If no one is unhappy with that.
That's fine with us. I think that's an important clarification.
Yeah. Okay, does anyone have any other comments on this? As Chelsea said, it's reasonably short. I think it's consistent with what we had looked at previously. Any other comments on the project proposal? Okay, then are we okay to approve it, given those changes? And if we are we happy that Chelsea and I just work on those, Chelsea, the Secretary does the changes and that I sign off on behalf of the board?
Michael, one question only.
Yes?
When we have the final version with the last formulations agreed upon now, can we have it all members of the GSSB? Because I have some persons in mind who could be qualified for taking part in this project, and for this purpose I would like to have the final wording. To contact them. Yes,
certainly, and I think, Chelsea, we can do that reasonably, within the next day, yes? And shoot it out.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, that's great.
So you would send it out to everybody, right? The last version?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so that's taken care of the slide that's up there at the moment, I think, Chelsea. So there we go. Thank you. Back to you.
Sure. So we are already engaged in starting to reach out to some experts in the water space, and so we've already contacted or identified and have either spoken to or will be speaking to the organizations listed here. So the Pacific Institute and the CEO Water Mandate, CDP, WRI, WWF, WBCSD, IPECA, and Deloitte. And we're also reaching out to or currently looking to schedule conversations with UN Water, ICMM, IUCN, the EU Global Water Partnership, and SIWI. Lots of acronyms, and really our aim is to use these conversations in order to help validate and expand on some of our background research. So we have Claudia and our team is working on some background research and briefing document both for our internal staff and also for project working group members, which will give them an assessment of what we see as some of the key developments or trends, but also an analysis of current reporting practice against our water disclosures. The second point is to help us identify critical instruments or reporting frameworks which are important to take into account or to look to harmonize with where possible. And last, to help us identify key organizations or perspectives that will need to be involved, either via the project working group or via a public comment period or otherwise. So these conversations are really helpful for us. We find we can learn more in 30 minutes with an expert than we can spending a few hours trying to read through and digest. It turns out there's a lot that's happened in water in the last 10 years since we last looked at these disclosures. So this is just a chance for the GSSB to either mention on the call or to follow up via email, as you did with OHS, on any additional contacts or suggestions for organizations that you think either they're so important, their knowledge in this space is so extensive that we should reach out to them for a quick briefing call, or we just need to make sure that we put them on the mailing list and inform them when we open the project working group nomination process. So any thoughts on that? Any stakeholders you would like to see represented? And Simeon, you have a question, it looks like. Go ahead.
Hi, Chelsea. Can you actually hear me?
Was that your question? Yes.
Hello. Hi. Oh, good. I'm just testing the audio here. Could you please remind me why Deloitte again? And it seems like the odd one out of the category. You know, those are the others are kind of. Well, this is a kind of a consultant kind of environment, and why Deloitte and not others?
Good question. Why Deloitte? Because our interim chief executive, your dear friend Eric Hespenheide, has a close relationship with one of their water content experts, who is both a good subject matter expert on the issue of water measurement, but also in reporting practice. And we thought that that is a useful initial conversation. So we don't have hard and fast rules about who to reach out to. We're trying not to make this a particularly political process. Mostly it is to help inform us so that we can set up a working group and the terms of reference appropriately. But that is why Deloitte is up there. You're right, it is the odd one out.
Right, thank you.
Nan Kumar had a comment that the Alliance for Water Stewardship is missing. Yeah, that they have not been on our initial conversation list, but we can certainly add them to it. And also a comment from Michael Nugent about the Water Accounting Standards Board, which operates out of the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. And Michael and Nan Kumar, if you have a personal contact at those organizations or an email address that you think would be a good way in, I would encourage you to send that through to us. Otherwise, we will have a look around.
Yeah, DNV is having a relationship with AWS. I will send you the contact.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
Chelsea, it's David here. I thought I'd sent you a link to AIRVAG, the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technology. They have a lot of expertise, not only in Switzerland, but around the world, and would be a useful body to contact for knowledge and expertise. Did you get that contact from me, or do I need to send it again?
I probably do. Let me check for it, and if not, I will follow up with you.
Great. Okay.
Any other suggestions here? If they don't come to you right away, that's fine. You can follow up with me directly after the meeting. Okay. So just looking ahead, we are, and I realize that I mistakenly, despite Michael pointing this out, did not update OHS on this slide. So this is for water. That's my mistake. Coming to the end of a very busy year here. We're getting a little sloppy. I apologize. We are looking for a GSSB sponsor for the water working group. And again, just to remind you of what that would entail, it means that you are basically the liaison contact who's following the progress of the project working group. You're not a member of that group, but you are observing many, not necessarily all, of their meetings. And most importantly, we really want you as the sponsor to be able to represent that work back objectively to the GSSB. So when the GSSB is asked to discuss and to approve the exposure drafts and eventually a final draft of these standards, that you can help to represent some of the dynamics and some of the decisions made by that project working group back to the GSSB. You will not be chairing the group or facilitating the meetings. There will be a project working group chair out of that group, and we will be helping to facilitate the discussions. So I would open it up. Don't be shy if you don't want to come forward. Nankumar, okay, that's excellent. Well, you are first
Chelsea.
to volunteer. Yes, go ahead.
Chelsea, this is Sulema. I'm calling through my mobile, so I will interrupt when I want to talk. Should I volunteer right now or should I wait?
You can volunteer right now. That is absolutely fine. The only thing I would flag, Sulema, but this is very much up for you, is that later in 2017 we will be also kicking off the Human Rights Review. And if you are, you may also be interested in being a sponsor. We're happy to have co-sponsors. I think that's not a bad thing if more than one GSSB member want to be involved and to share some of that role. I think that would be excellent. So we are happy to put you on the list, but also just bear that in mind.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. I have this very special feeling about human rights, but I also want to be an observer of the Water Working Group due to my interest on human rights. This is the thing. If it's okay.
Of course.
But if I have to choose.
Well, is there any other expression of interest? I'm willing to let you fight it out. We might be open to selective bribes if it's something you really want to, you feel strongly about. Any other members interested? Otherwise, we will go ahead and confirm Nankumar and Sulema.
Just pointing out that if I had to choose, I prefer work with human rights for sure. But if I can have both, I would like to be an observer on the Water Working Group.
Well, we don't have rules about how many you can co-sponsor, Sulema. So if you think you've got the capacity, I mean, you are the woman who signed up to review every standard last year. So if you have the capacity, I am more than, Michael, I defer to you. I'm more than happy to say that should be fine. And when we look at sponsors or co-sponsors for human rights later in the year, you would also be open to join that one. Michael, anything you would want to add on that?
Well, I just wonder whether it might make sense in setting expectations that Sulema could be the sponsor of the human rights ones and an observer on the OH&S water. Sorry, would that make sense?
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Chelsea.
No problem. And thank you, Nankumar, for coming forward with that. And we will be in touch with more detail on what you've just signed up for.
Thank you.
So next steps, looking ahead, we do have the holidays coming up, but we are doing some work up into the holidays and then beginning early in January. So we will be continuing the background research and scoping calls for water, which are already underway. We will share the draft terms of reference with the GSSB sponsor for approval, and we will also circulate the draft terms of reference for water and OH&S with the full GSSB for any comments. So that is for information. You don't have to approve it, but if you have feedback or suggestions, you're welcome to send those through to us. You will get that either today or tomorrow, and then you'll have until first week of January to give any comments. They're not long documents. And we also are working, Sarah Kemke is on our team, is developing a project web page for each of these review standards. So she will be pulling together all of the information when you have people who are interested in potentially participating in a working group or being informed of the process. They will be able to go to these project web pages and find all the information they need in one place. When we come back in the new year, so already in 2017, our first priority is to finalize the terms of reference and the application form for project working group applicants and to continue the expert scoping interviews. Some of these now we are scheduling ahead of Christmas, but the interviews will be carried out in January. We are aiming, and I think we are on track with a good bit of effort from the team, to actually open the call for project working group nominations on Monday, the 16th of January, and we will have some communications going out from GRI to that end. But we also would encourage, we'll have a short sort of message and a direct email that we can send to GSSB members. And if you have people in your networks that you think might be interested, we would ask you to forward that on. And we have a 5-week period when those call for nominations will be open, so through the 19th of February. We expect to begin the interviews on a rolling basis before the end of that period, and then we're aiming to share the proposed membership with the GSSB by the first week of March. And right here, we have a potential requested change in the schedule of virtual meetings for the GSSB next year. So it's my preference that if it's possible to move the scheduled February call back to the week of the 6th of March, that we could take that opportunity to actually discuss and to have the GSSB give feedback and hopefully approve the project working group membership at that time. And that gives us an extra sort of 2.5 weeks to get these groups organized. Otherwise, our next opportunity would be to have you approve that during your in-person meeting on the 20th of March. So,
Can you give the date again, Chelsea?
Well, right now we don't have a confirmed date. Pamela and Tina have advised that it makes more sense to wait for our new GSSB members who will be confirmed. We'll find out more about that later, I think in January, and then to send a scheduling poll to see which dates might be acceptable if we can move that meeting back. The backup plan is that we don't have the GSSB approval until 20th of March during your in-person session here. And that's possible too, it just delays the start of our process a bit more.
Okay.
So it means that instead of sort of starting to have the first introductory meetings with the group in early April, we probably would be pushing that back until mid-April or late April. So go ahead.
Chelsea, there's Kirsten here. Just to be sure, it's a bit confusing not being online here, only on the phone. But what you're suggesting is that it's the web meeting that will be moved, and the in-person meeting will stay as before.
Yes, yeah. I don't think we're going to propose moving the in-person. It would only be the virtual meeting that might be slid back.
Okay. Yeah, no problem for me.
Okay, so that's just to give you a heads up. We have a short session later in the meeting to talk about the proposed agenda and things to cover with the GSSB at the first few meetings in 2017, just so you know what we're thinking and what's likely to be in the pipeline. But with that, I will move on to the next session unless there's any further comments on water. No. Okay. So we had intended this part of the agenda to be a share back with the GSSB about input from the Stakeholder Council and the board on the project proposals for OH&S and water. So the Stakeholder Council had received the draft proposals 2 weeks ago, and they had until today to provide us any additional input. And the board received them about a week ago, and we've given them until January to provide comments. So I'm sure they're busy, and they did have a discussion, both groups, at the work program planning stage about future priorities. So we have not received any additional comments from Stakeholder Council and board members. We have, however, spoken individually to some members of the governance groups related to OH&S and will be doing so with relation to water as well. So what I've asked instead is for Lara to just give you a short update on her process related to speaking with experts related to occupational health and safety and some of those emerging findings or lessons learned that are already starting to come out of these interviews. So I will turn it over to her, and we'll just spend maybe 5 or 7 minutes giving you a bit of an update on where we're at so far with that process.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hello, everyone. So yeah, in the next few minutes, I just want to give you a brief update on the progress made so far with occupational health and safety, and some of the key findings from the scoping calls we had up until now, and then what's coming next for this project. And so we have been working on a terms of reference for the project working group, which has been circulated among the GSSB sponsors, Stian and Dwight. We have received some comments from Stian and Dwight. You also have a few comments that you will be sharing soon. And as Chelsea mentioned, either today or tomorrow, we will circulate the terms of reference with the full GSSB for comments. Next to that, we have been conducting scoping calls with members from the GRI governance bodies who are either experts in OHS or who have an interest in the project. And so far, we had conversations with Kirsty Drew from the Trade Union Advisory Committee to the OECD, Shelley Frost from the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health. Both of them are members of the Stakeholder Council. We also had conversations with Rob McGarrah from the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, from the GRI Board of Directors, and also with Stan Rogers from the AVTEQ Consulting Services, who is a member of the DPOC, the Due Process Oversight Committee. And next to that, we are in touch with Dwight Justice and Jürgen Buxbaum, as well as Manfred Warda from the GRI Board of Directors, who will provide a coordinated response on behalf of the labor constituency. In addition, we have applied to speak at the 21st World Congress for Safety and Health at Work, which will take place in September of next year in Singapore. And that should coincide nicely with the public comment for this standard. And in April next year, we will know if our submission has been accepted. So next, I want to share some of the initial takeaways from the scoping calls we had with the members from our inner circle. We've learned about some of the concerns that have arisen from the ISO 45001 process. Some of those concerns relate to how to understand the term risk and what should be in scope when conducting risk assessments for occupational health and safety, or what should be the scope of worker participation and consultation. We have been recommended to become a liaison member to the ISO 45001 committee, and in early January we will have a conversation with our contact at ISO to explore this possibility. Some of the key trends in this space that have been flagged during these conversations include well-being, mental health, migration, supply chain, aging population, the changing nature of work and new technologies, and also workplace violence, among others. And in particular for well-being, some of the experts that we have been in touch with have asked us to be cautious about including this trend as part of the scope of this standard, mainly due to the potential for discrimination against workers, and the fact that, according to them, the scope of the review should be on the conditions of work and not so much on the individual. Also, many of the experts we've spoken to have asked us to consider the alignment of the standard with other standards available, mainly the ILO conventions and ISO 45001, and to build upon the work already done by others in this space. And that would include the work that we've done in the past for the sector disclosures, the work done by SASB, IIRC, the Center for Safety and Health Sustainability, and also the guidance issued by stock exchanges. And lastly, something else that has come up during these conversations is the importance of leading indicators compared to traditional lagging indicators, such as injury rates, etc. And that is because of the practices of underreporting or manipulation of OHS data. So this is a quick snapshot of some of the key trends and takeaways from these initial calls. And then for next steps, we will be finalizing the desk research on current reporting practice around OHS. As Chelsea mentioned, we will be issuing the open call for project working group nominations on the 16th of January, and we are at the moment scheduling additional calls with external experts, which will take place between January and February. So we will be speaking to the labor union experts once they are nominated. And Dwight and Jürgen, it would be great to have you in those conversations if you are available. We are reaching out to the ILO, the ISO, and the IOE, sorry for all of the acronyms, and also the Center for Safety and Health Sustainability, the World Health Organization, and the International Commission on Occupational Health. So these are at the top of our list at the moment, and then depending on capacity, we might be reaching out to additional regional agencies. And if you have any ideas for additional organizations or experts that we should be reaching out to in January, then please let us know in the coming weeks. So I leave it at that, and yeah, we can open for any comments or questions that you have.
Laura, I have a question. It's Michael here. The suggestion about joining the ILO group as a or committee as a liaison representative, or however that was termed, I just have a thought about that in that the ISO, I looked up that project today on the website and couldn't get any substantive information on it because they're what they call a DIS, public inquiry draft. You have to pay to get. So it seems to me, and I looked up their due process, it seems to me they don't have open public exposure in the same way that many other standard setters, including GSSB, does have. So that being, it might be worth pursuing that when you speak with them and seeing if that is the case. I may have it wrong. But if that is the case, I would wonder whether GSSB should in fact become a liaison member. I'm sure there's a lot to learn from the work they're doing, and I would not hesitate in accessing that through other means, but becoming a liaison member I would be somewhat concerned about. Thank you.
Michael, this is Laura. Yeah, so what you said is exactly right, and one of the reasons why we would be interested in becoming a liaison member is to have more visibility into the ISO process, as both of our projects will be running in parallel next year. And what we hear from the experts we've been speaking to in the past weeks is that it would be important for the two standards to be, to the extent possible, aligned. And that is the main reason why we are considering this option at the moment. And Dwight, I believe you are a liaison for the process, and maybe it would be great to hear from you as to what that would entail exactly.
Yes, the way the ISO works is they basically conduct their work on the basis of national delegations from national standards bodies. And the decision-making process is based upon essentially votes of national delegations, where every national delegation has to take a national position. Now, I think if they didn't do this, it would be very difficult for them to achieve a consensus. A liaison organization does not have votes in final decisions or in plenaries of committees. However, liaison organizations can provide experts that participate fully in working groups of committees that develop standards. And they're also provided with all the information that's necessary to participate. And the ITUC is a liaison organization in this committee that's developing the Health and Safety Management System standard, and as is the ILO and the International Organization of Employers, and a variety of health and safety related organizations, some of which I think are very important, and I want to make some suggestions to you later on. But I'm not sure if what would be the role of the GRI as a liaison, never mind the procedural issues involved, because at this point in time, the standard is fairly well along, although there are parts of it that do relate to reporting. So maybe that would be parts that you might want to provide some input on. So now that I think about it, maybe that is something for you to do. But the ISO standards are very elaborate rules, and some of the rules involve confidentiality, which I think. But by the time you get to a draft international standard, as this document is, it's not that secret anymore. It's they still self-documents, but I think the content of them are certainly known by lots of organizations at this point in time.
Yeah, if I can just respond to that. Thank you, Dwight. That's useful. Our intent, and just to clarify, Michael, we would participate as a liaison organization as GRI, and the intent was not to give input actually at all, was only to be kept informed of the development of their standards so that we actually are able to see the draft documents as they're produced, developed, and shared. Otherwise, we are reliant on the interpretation of those through our network, and we find actually that experts have different interpretations. So I don't think it's as controversial. We're not looking to give input. We are simply looking to be able to access and to be kept informed of those standards as they develop. And whether or not the working group chooses to align with sections of the ISO standard or not to align will be up to them largely. But it's important for us to know what we're actually discussing in that context.
I'll be happy to look into those questions and get back to you too.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. If I could just add that my concern is, I guess, about lending credibility to what is at the end of the day a proprietary rather than an open source standard. So if it's GRI rather than the GSSB, I guess that's their decision. I'd just be nervous about GSSB doing it, but okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, good point. No, I think for us it's just GRI at the moment. Okay, so any other comments on that before we move on?
Chelsea, this is Sulema. I just want to know if it's not suitable here, I can receive the information through email, but I'm seeing a desk research on current reporting practices, and I would like to know the sources where the desk research will be based on.
Yeah, good question. So we're doing that research in-house, and we are just essentially, we have some of our research analysts having a look at reporting practice against the G4 indicators, both for OH&S and for water. And our intent is to share those findings with the project working group, but also to be briefing the GSSB on some of those key findings early next year.
So just being sure that I understood the sources of the research is only G4 reports, right?
Yes, because we will not have enough reports against the standards in order to inform that process. So it's a little bit of an imperfect proxy, but actually for water in particular, most of those indicators moved into the standards pretty much untouched. For OHS, it's a little bit trickier, but we are still finding some areas where even against the G4 indicators, reporting practice was very different than what the indicators were asking for.
So we're talking about current GRI reporting practice, right?
Yes.
You're not looking at others. Okay.
We're looking at GRI reports, but one of the areas that we're pulling out of that research will be where actually companies that are using GRI are reporting above and beyond or on different areas that are not covered by our indicators. So it is looking at how they're reporting when they claim to be reporting against our indicators, how they're actually reporting and which breakdowns they're not reporting, for example, but also the additional information that we see in these reports, which might go above and beyond what we have required with G4. But no, it is focused really on looking at the context around the G4 reporting.
Okay, thank you.
Dwight, do you have more comments, or is that an older message?
No, it's a newer message.
Okay.
Just a few comments. As we understand, Jorgen and I and Manfred and many of the labor people will be getting back to you with suggestions and comments on individuals and I'm also thinking of probably other organizations that are not trade union organizations. But in any event, I will be also making comments on the terms of reference, and I just wanted to highlight the two areas where I'll probably be commenting on. On lines 24 and 25, there is a sentence concerning key references, and I've been doing some thought as to how to do this, and I don't think that's quite the way we want to do it. I think the key references need to focus more on what are the specific expectations that more than the sort of management systems that I think, and then in the lines 58 and 59, it quite rightly talks about impacts, but I think the essential feature is it has to be the impacts on persons performing work. I don't think it's good enough to just say impacts. I think that becomes not a small matter. But anyway, and then in the same thing, the same comment I had would also apply to the project proposal itself. And I'll send you something soon.
Okay, just to jump in for the rest of the group, so the other members don't yet have the draft terms of reference. That was only shared with the sponsors for OH&S yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's fine. But if people are scrambling to find line numbers, that's why. Dwight, I can say if you're able to put those comments in an email to Lara sort of before tomorrow, then we can incorporate them already in the next version to be shared with the broader GSSB for their information and comments.
Okay.
That would be great. Okay, so on that note, we will move on. The next thing I wanted to cover very briefly is just a quick look ahead into next year. So before you all go off for the holidays, we are starting to think about how to get prepared for your first series of meetings already. They're going to come up quite quickly. We have 3 meetings scheduled for the first quarter of next year. We have a virtual meeting on the 26th of January. We have a virtual meeting on the 23rd of February. And Kirsten, that's the one that we may look to move back to the week of the 6th of March if that works for people's schedules. But we will only do the scheduling poll next year once we have new members. And then we have an in-person meeting on the 20th and 21st of March.
Chelsea, sorry to interrupt, but there is something on the line that makes it impossible to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, we heard it too. We don't know what it is. Is everybody muted?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, we will carry on, provided you can hear us in the interim. I'm looking at our sound.
Yeah, seems to be fine now.
Tech, okay. So for January, we have a virtual meeting. Salema, did you have a question?
No, I can barely hear you. There's a background noise that's interfering in the sound.
Is that better now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we heard it as well. We don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for January's meeting, it's a virtual meeting. We hope, and we'll have a little bit of an update on this later, but we hope to already be welcoming some new members of the GSSB by that meeting. And we will start with some introductions if they're able to join us already in January. We will give you an update on applicants for the 2 working groups. We will have already had sort of 10 days of open nomination process, and we suspect that we have already in our network very strong pools of potential applicants for these 2 working groups, but that we may struggle to fill some constituencies. So particularly by then we will have an indication of where we're likely to struggle to find good applicants, and we will ask for the GSSB's help in reaching out to your networks in those areas. We also want to cover already in January with you the objectives of some of the background research and scoping work that we will do for the second phase of topic standards, which include the human rights reviews, economic performance, and effluence and waste. So what our intention is that by the time we bring you in person to Amsterdam in March, that we will already be looking at scoping out and finalizing the scope of those second phase of standards reviews during that in-person meeting. And if we need to do some background work or research or looking at reporting practice or trends in international instruments, that we can get that underway during February. In the February meeting, or potentially moving it to the beginning of March, ideally, we would be able to actually ask for approval of the proposed project working group membership for occupational health and safety and water. So that would really allow us then to already go ahead and confirm a meeting schedule with those members. And also we can discuss the preliminary background research on human rights and economic performance. March, as I mentioned, we will already have an update on the project working group formation for the phase 1, water and OH&S, and we will be able to give you a briefing on key takeaways from our background research, and that is where we will, oh, maybe I've gotten those dates wrong. Pamela's checking. This might be my fault, Non-Kamar. I think you might be right. Non-Kamar said that he has 22nd and 23rd of March. We will check on that for you. We will have a discussion on the scope and the structure of phase 2 standards. So this is really where, particularly for human rights, but also when we're talking about economic performance and the various new content areas such as tax or payments to governments, we want to really thrash out with the GSSB what is the objective of reviewing these standards, what is the scope, what are the options on the table, are we considering combining human rights related standards, are we considering moving them, and it looks like Non-Kamar, both you and I were incorrect. It is the 21st to the 22nd of March is our in-person meeting. So apologies on attention to detail about the timing. 21st to 22nd of March. So I would envision that the brunt of the actual discussion time with the GSSB will be an update and a briefing on what we're doing with the phase 1 standards, but really asking for your assistance to get the scoping right for that second set of standards so that we are very clear on the objectives and the process going forward. We will give you an update on our monitoring work and the technical queries. So already we are fielding quite a lot of questions about the standards, quite a lot of feedback, and Tamara on our team is putting together a monitoring approach and project for next year. So we will be talking to reporters, figuring out where there may be additional standards review or update projects in the pipeline to bring to the GSSB's attention, where we might need to develop communication or interpretations. And then we will also cover at that in-person meeting a discussion on other standards division priorities out of the work program. So we hope to have an update on sector work, linkage documents, and other collaborations. So any other areas that you want to raise that you think we should be flagging to discuss in these first few meetings? Of course, we have some flexibility to finalize the agendas closer to the date, but I wanted to give you a sense of how we're starting to envision the progression between January and March of next year, and to open it up for any comments from the GSSB.
Chelsea, it's Michael. I'm finding those updates on the monitoring and technical queries really helpful, and wonder whether that should be a standing agenda item, so on each of the meetings. It's a matter of time, I guess, and whether it fits into the conference calls or not. But anyhow, that is a comment that I would have. I'd prefer to have more of them when we can fit them in, even if they're not discussed, and just for information.
Good point, Michael. That was the intent. It was only that we have more of an in-depth discussion as well during the in-person meeting. But yes, our proposal is to continue providing you an update on a monthly basis of what we've received and any things that we think may need further discussion. But good to know that those are useful.
Robin speaking. I just wanted to flag, and I'm sure you're all aware, that the final report of the TCFD has been released. So probably in March it will be good timing to discuss the climate reporting issue.
Yes, we are aware, Robin, and we will be, at least from GRI perspective. I got an email from Eric yesterday. We will be coordinating a response. I'm sure we'll work together, Michael, with some input from you on that. And then certainly if there are implications for future work priorities, that could certainly come into the discussion during the in-person meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments to raise or not at this time? No. Okay, we will move on then. And the next item is going back over to Michael to discuss GSSB membership.
Okay, thanks for that, Chelsea. And Chelsea, you mentioned earlier when you had a word wrong on a slide, you apologised for being sloppy. I think that one word out of several hundreds of thousands of words that you've processed in the last 6 or 12 months is neither here nor there, so I certainly don't think that's sloppy. The offer to take bribes, however, was a bit of an issue, but we'll let that slip too. Departing members. As you all know, we've got 5 members who are rotating off at the end of this year. We've distributed a complete list of the rotation schedule so that it's on the public record and you all know when each other and yourself are going off. We have 5 members off at the end of this year, as I said: David, Hadimi, myself, Simeon and Robin, all of whom are entitled and welcome or eligible to offer themselves for reappointment. I did mention on a previous call that I had not intended to offer myself for reappointment, just as a matter of transparency and mild passing interest. When they extended the application or nomination date, I actually did reconsider and did offer myself for reappointment should they choose to want me to do so. So whether I'm one of the ones who this is their final meeting or not, I'm not sure, but certainly for some of us it will be. Just in terms of an update on the process, the Independent Appointments Committee has, as I mentioned, had extended the nomination date to the end of November. And as a result, they received quite a good number, I believe, and good quality list of people from whom they are now needing to choose. They are doing interviews of people through December, over the holiday period and into January. So they will not likely be in a position at the end of December, which was their initial hope, to complete the process and announce the full contingent of board members for next year. But they do certainly hope to have that by mid, or maybe, if it's necessary, end of January. Certainly the hope by the time of our next call. In the interim, they have assured us that they will have 11 members always on the GSSB, as is required by our terms of reference. Judy, you would like to say something. You've raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I simply wanted to say I know that of the 5 departing GSSB members, there will be at least some of them who have put themselves forward for potential renomination. We don't know what will happen with that yet. But I wanted to raise a motion that the Standards Board recognize the very diligent and dedicated service of these 5 members who are coming to the end of their current terms, and thank them heartily for all of their efforts on behalf of the GSSB and the GRI in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That's very much welcome that you raise that. I would like to raise a similar motion, but I'm one of the departing members, or possibly so. It seems a bit conceited to do so. So I thank you for doing that. Do I hear any disagreement with that motion, a formal motion of thanks?
This is Dwight. Perhaps we could amend the motion so we thank everybody except you, Michael.
That seems satisfactory, Dwight. And then everyone could endorse that, I'm sure.
Michael, Jürgen is speaking. I have a quick question. I was wondering why in some cases on this list, the duration of the term is 2 years, and in other cases 3, for instance. What is that? I mean, start of the term on the list is 1 January 15, and end of the term 31 of December 16. These are 2 years, and when we go below, further down, we have another duration.
Yes, I can see that. So it's actually yourself and Daniel Ingram who are there for 2 years rather than 3. I'm not sure. It could be, just trying to cast my mind back, and I'll ask Pamela if she is on the call and can hear us and speak to respond. But it could be that you were appointed a year later than when the term for your position actually started. Judy's saying, I believe they were casual vacancies. Judy or Pamela, would you like to address that if you have further knowledge?
Hi, this is Pamela from... Oops. I'm sorry, Judy. If you want to go ahead, please do.
No, you please go ahead, because I'm sure you have more authoritative knowledge on this than I do.
Thank you, Judy. Because of the creation of the GSSB at the beginning of 2015, we wanted to avoid rotation issues by providing different lengths of terms to the GSSB members. And that is why, for example, for the ones who have transferred from the TAC, you see varying term lengths. As for the term for Jürgen, if I'm not mistaken, your term is indeed 3 years. So the full year of 2016, the full year of 2017, and the full year of 2018. I'm not sure if this answers the question.
Well, I frankly admit I didn't get that. And I didn't ask in particular having myself in mind. I was just wondering, end of term, for instance, in some cases end of 16, in other cases end of 17, end of 18. So these are differences. What is the normal length of the term? 3 years is the normal length, right? Isn't it the normal duration?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
So I did not really understand your explanation why. You say you want to avoid different durations, but when I look at this list, we do have these differences.
Okay, I think I understand. It's to do with staggered rotations. So they need to get, because GSSB started, they need to stagger the rotations so that 5 rotate off every year, beginning at the end of this year. And this list, okay, regardless, I guess, of when you started, your first term can be longer or shorter, as long as we get, by the end of the 3rd year of the GSSB, everyone has started to rotate off, or we have 5 rotating off every 3 years, sorry. That may not have been very good. Judy, you're probably more eloquent than I.
I think you've said it correctly, or at least factually correctly anyway, Michael. It's simply that when the GSSB started up, it would not be in the GSSB's interest for the entire board to rotate off at the end of 3 years. So the appointments committee, in its wisdom, assigned staggered rotations to allow for this for continuity from 1 year to the next, without having major upheaval caused by very large numbers of people having to rotate off all at the same time.
That makes sense in my view. But the normal duration is 3 years, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, this is Sulema. If I can add additional information, it's because of the transitioning process from TAC to GSSB. So if you could look at the last column of the GSSB rotation schedule, the PDF file,
Yeah.
So there are some members that being part of the TAC since January 2005, others since 2011, and then when transitioning from TAC to GSSB, we have decided to
the TAC
define
was the former technical committee, right?
Yes, yes. This is why some members are leaving us in this year. Some member will terminate their mandate in December 2017, and others in 2018, and gone, because we have this transition from GSA to GSSB.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you, Evan,
Mike.
for that query, and thank you all who contributed to the answer. Are there any other queries or questions on this? We also, I guess, in the administrative section at the end, the private session, we may have time if there is any personal thanks or matters that people want to mention. That's probably the time for it then. But is there anything else on this item that people would like to mention? Yeah.
Michael, this is Judy. At the risk of just being a bit of a stickler for process, it seems to me that my motion of thanks to the 5 members is still on the table, and I just wanted to make sure that it was formally adopted into the record.
I just want to check whether I'm included or excluded from that motion. Let's try it first of all with me, included. Is there anyone who is averse to that motion going?
Highly supported.
Okay.
We support.
Okay. All right. So I think we have support for that motion, with me included. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judy. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is any other business. And we have one sort of formal issue that's been sent out with the agenda papers, and that is the technical queries. After this, I'll ask if anyone has any other items. Oh, we have 2 items. Sorry, I see on the slide introduction of a new team member. Chelsea, can I ask you if you could introduce a new team member now, maybe?
Sure. I will say just a couple words, and then I'll actually turn it over to Anna to introduce herself. So as the GSSB knows, Katja left us over the summer to go on and pursue new pursuits. And we have only now been able to successfully fill her role. So we are really delighted to have welcomed to the team Anna Kratova, who joins us as a manager. She will be working first on the water review. And we will work through determine other priorities for her a bit later. Before I turn it over to Anna to give you just a few words on her background, I would say that we have also lost Jan, who worked on our team and who many of you know through managing parts of the transition to standards as an analyst. He has gone on to join, he still works within GRI, and he has gone on to take on a role as a coordinator within our knowledge unit team. So we wish him the very best, and we have an open call. We interviewed for 2 additional coordinator roles. We have made an offer to 1 candidate, but we're only able to find 1 candidate that we wanted to bring in. So we will look to re-recruit for the second of those roles early next year, hopefully. We are running short-staffed, and the team is feeling the pressure. But to that end, we are extra appreciative of having Anna join us already in December, and I will now turn it over to her to just say a few words to you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hi, GSSB members. I have the Global Reporting Initiative webpage open on my computer right now with the GSSB members page, where I'm trying to put the names to the voices that I'm hearing over this session. I have 7 years of sustainability background. I've been involved in this field from college up until now. I was working in Russia with the International Finance Corporation, where I've been fostering the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency initiatives. Then in 2012, I decided to get myself up to date with the recent developments in the field and moved to the Netherlands to pursue a master's degree in industrial ecology. And after that, I've been working in a sustainability consultancy firm here in Amsterdam, where I was consulting various industries on how they can move their operations towards a more sustainable and circular state. 2 weeks ago, I joined the standards team with the GRI. We're very busy with laying the groundwork for updating the water standard in 2017. And still a lot to go before the holiday week, going on holiday next week. Thank you.
Anna's very modest, but she's already hit the ground running here and has already taken on quite a lot of work. And she, I think, has gotten a taste that there's more to come in 2017. She has heard a lot about the GSSB and individual GSSB members, so she will be very eager also to meet you all in person in March. But you will start to hear more from her already probably in January. And yeah, we're very, very glad to have her.
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you, Anna, and very, very warm welcome to you. They're a great team in there in the Standards Division, so I'm sure that you'll feel at home very quickly. And it does sound as though they've already got you working quite hard, which I guess is something else you can expect, but rewarding nonetheless, one would hope. So welcome and congratulations on your appointment. The other item was the technical questions. Chelsea, did you want to go through those at all, or did you want me to do that?
Sure, we can. So our intent here was to provide the GSSB with a monthly update of the questions that we've received through the standards inbox, and then to flag particularly any questions that we think might require some discussion or could even potentially require an interpretation amongst the GSSB. So it won't be the case that we discuss specific questions every month or that we have a specific agenda item, but we do encourage members to look through, and if you want to raise something for further discussion, then we will make time for it. We had a couple of comments from Kirsten on the paper, so I can turn it over to her in a moment. I would just say that I was out doing launch events in Stockholm 2 weeks ago and in London last week, and we've run a number of webinars and also dedicated webinars for our Gold Community pioneers, so the first set of companies that are moving to the standards. And there are 3 areas that we've identified where we want to develop, this will be first priority in January, some more clear communications for GRI staff members, but also potentially for GSSB members to use. And these are on the rationale for the clarification around materiality. This is our #1 most asked for question related to the definition of impacts. We are getting it every time we speak about the standards, and many companies, I think, are really now recognizing that their existing dimensions of materiality may need to be adjusted in order to be in line with our clarified definition. So what we will put together, and we can share this certainly with the GSSB, and we will also share for initial comments from Michael, is a little bit more explanation of the rationale behind why that clarification was made. The second points relate to how the GRI standards fit with other frameworks. So we will be developing some messaging around how we see GRI and SASB as complementary, not competing. And we will also be developing some talking points, and Eric actually Hespenheide shared with me last week the start of some drafts that they'd put together at the MT level about how actually GRI and IIRC can also be complementary or could work together. So without a consistent set of talking points on these issues, we're finding that GRI staff members are having to answer them on the spur of the moment in possibly slightly different ways in public speaking events. So we want to make sure that we are as consistent as possible. Those are the 3 areas. I don't think there needs to be additional work on interpretations or changes to the standards on those areas, but these are communication and clarification issues that we'll take on board and be able to share back in January. Maybe Kirsten?
Sorry, Chelsea.
Yeah, go ahead.
I only got 2. That was consistency with other frameworks and impacts and materiality, which was 1. What was the third one?
Sorry, I was counting those as 2. Clarification, materiality, SASB, and IIRC. And I would say that with the exception of questions about sectors, probably 60 to 70% of our questions are falling into one of those 3 categories: clarification of impacts and materiality, SASB, and IIRC.
Okay, thanks.
So Kirsten, do you want to raise the point that you had?
Yes, you're thinking about the summary of technical questions?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe, Kirsten, if I just preface it, Okay, I guess we don't want to discuss these two issues in any great detail. Can I just ask first, though, whether people agree, and I think this might be Kirsten's point, whether people agree with the conclusion on these two issues that are raised in the cover note, that Standards Division takes no further action at the moment, but simply monitors these points rather than issuing some facts or anything else at the moment. Do people agree, or does anyone disagree with that?
Nankumar here.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think we should issue some response to this feedback so that the standards are well accepted and understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kirsten, did you want to mention?
Yes, it's regarding the hybrid G4/standards reports on line 19 to 29. And from my point of view, as long as it's clearly stated what is what, and the claim is still G4, I am not very concerned that people start doing these hybrids as a part of their transfer to the standards. But I'm not sure if it's something that GSSB should really promote. But we should, at the same time, I don't think we should set the foot down and say that this is not acceptable, because it might make the transition easier for some organizations, and it's also a way for them to move forward in a way exploring a few standards or doing some of the things that have been recommended through the standards that weren't as clear in the G4. For instance, introducing the non-GRI material topics is an example that that would be very relevant for some companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. I agree. Chelsea, did you have any? Oh, sorry. Does anyone else have any comments on this paper? Chelsea, do you have any response to Nankumar or Kirsten?
Sure. On this point, we did respond that it is technically possible, but that it's not the intent, that the expectation is more that companies would transition wholesale over. So we can't stop companies from publishing a G4 report and referencing specific sections of the standards, but we did struggle to think how this actually works in practice. So to Kirsten's point, certainly there are elements of including non-GRI topics within that report, for example, which might be very useful for reporters. Many are already doing this actually in G4, but maybe they realize that this is an option and they want to start this already. But how they would be referencing the standards, would they then say we've also referenced requirement 2.6.1 out of GRI 101 Foundation? The structure doesn't work always in a very harmonious way. So the most important thing that we wanted to emphasize here is that there needs to be transparency in how the standards or elements of those standards have been applied. So it is possible for them to do this, but I think also it could also create to some confusion in terms of claims about using the standards when actually maybe it is still not a report that would meet the criteria in GRI 101 Foundation.
Thanks, Chelsea. I agree that, I mean, these things, maybe there is a little scope for some, creative ambiguity and that trying to clamp down on these things too soon with rules around them and prescriptions, maybe unfortunate, may lead to unintended consequences. So, I guess I would think I would prefer not to, just to keep tabs on these things, and if they turn into problems, then do something, but not to set the hairs running by doing a specific FAQ about them and maybe tipping off people to this as a possibility. Do you respond, Chelsea, to individuals when they raise these questions?
We do. It takes up quite a lot of time in the team, and largely, so what we discussed with the GSSB towards, a number of months ago is that our responses now are really trying to refer people back to text in the standards as much as possible, so we don't provide any interpretation on that text. So for this case, I can share the actual response we gave, but it was to the degree that this is possible, but it's not something that we're actively endorsing or recommending. And I agree with you, Michael, we certainly wouldn't, I don't think we want to promote this in any way or to encourage companies to take it as an option, because I think there is the potential for some confusion and some mixed claims in the market. But yes, we do respond. So this standards@globalreporting.org for technical queries, all of that comes in to our team. And Sharon Hagen on the team has been leading the coordination and organization of these responses, but eventually we will be putting it on more of a rota system for different team members to handle that under oversight from probably Lara and myself.
Okay, thank you. Nankuma, are you happy with that individuals are responded to, and therefore maybe we don't need to have a more generic response that we put out?
Yes, I'm happy with that. So that they should not feel that there is no response from GRI. So it's good to respond to individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments on this item, any other item, paper 4? No, okay, well, and I'll just reiterate that I'm finding these really helpful to understand, except, as has been pointed out, the one that's in German, which was a bit difficult. I haven't yet run it through Google Translator, but I guess I could do that to find out what it's saying. But they are very helpful to get them. Okay, does anyone else have any other item of business that they would like to raise during the public meeting? No? Okay, that being the case, I'm going to draw the public meeting to a close. I'll ask members to stay online because we do have a few minutes of administration to talk about. Yeah, I guess so. With that, we shall end the public meeting. I'm not sure, Chelsea or Pamela, how do we do that? Do you just give us an okay when we're offline?